Hey guys, tonight we drift back to a moonless night on the edge of the Black Sea. The air smells of salt and coal smoke. Somewhere off Odessa, two sleek silhouettes glide through the darkness. You can almost hear the creak of metal decks as crews in fezzes whisper over torpedo tubes. A clock ticks toward midnight. Then, a hiss, a flash, and a column of seawater erupts beneath a Russian gunboat. The Ottoman cruisers Goeben and Breslau have struck. Within minutes, explosions ripple across the port. Startled sailors tumble from hammocks. Church bells clash with the thunder of naval guns, and the city that thought itself safe from war is suddenly burning. You're witnessing the moment the Ottoman Empire crosses a line it can't uncross. It's 29th October 1914, and this audacious raid against Russia drags an old empire into the Great War. Officially, Constantinople still insists it's neutral. Unofficially, you can already smell the gunpowder on its hands. Historians still argue whether the Ottoman cabinet fully approved the attack, or whether Enver Pasha, the ambitious minister of war, simply seized the chance to impress his German allies. Either way, the die is cast. The Russians retaliate, the British and French declare war, and the ancient empire of the Sultans finds itself aligned with the Central Powers. You probably won't survive this. Not if you're one of the thousands of Anatolian farmers soon to be handed a rifle older than their grandfathers and marched into the mountains. But don't worry, you're only here in spirit. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The spark at Odessa doesn't come from nowhere. For years, the Ottoman Empire has been watching Europe slide toward catastrophe. Once nicknamed the sick man, it's desperate to prove it still matters. Germany, hungry for allies, woos the Sultan with flattery, advisors, and modern steel warships. Those very same Goeben and Breslau, which had fled British pursuit in the Mediterranean and sought refuge in the Dardanelles that summer. When Britain seizes two Ottoman dreadnoughts being built in British shipyards, public outrage boils over. Germany cleverly gifts its cruisers to the Sultan, their crews swapping caps for fezzes overnight. A propaganda coup wrapped in naval camouflage. On the docks of Constantinople, crowds cheer as the new fleet parades under Ottoman flags. Children chant the names Yavuz Sultan Selim and Midilli, unaware that these ships will soon drag their empire into the abyss. In smoky coffee houses, men argue whether siding with Germany is destiny or folly. Some dream that victory will restore lost provinces. Others warn that the empire can barely govern what it still holds. Imagine sitting there, tea glass trembling in your hand, while newspapers blare that Europe's great powers have all gone mad. When the raid on Odessa hits, telegrams crackle across ministries. The Grand Vizier, Sayyid Halim Pasha, reportedly blanches at the news. "Who ordered this?" he demands. Enver Pasha smiles thinly. He claims it was retaliation for Russian provocations, a convenient fiction. By dawn, Russian coastal cities from Odessa to Sevastopol have been shelled. Within days, Tsar Nicholas II declares war. The British cut the flow of coal through the Mediterranean. And suddenly, the empire that once ruled 3 continents must fight on all of them at once. In the capital, the muezzins call out the dawn prayer, just as government clerks draft orders for mobilization. Families watch their sons vanish down narrow alleys toward recruiting stations. Horses, donkeys, even camels are commandeered. Somewhere near the Sublime Port, Enver Pasha stands before a wall map dotted with pins and colored strings. His vision is grand, a pan-Turkic march eastward to unite the Turkic peoples of Central Asia. He imagines Ottoman banners fluttering over Baku and beyond. A fringe tidbit? He actually orders new uniforms made of special wool for mountain warfare, though most soldiers will never receive them. The empire's European provinces are already gone, lost in the Balkan Wars only 2 years earlier. Anatolia, Syria, Mesopotamia, Arabia, these are what remain, held together more by habit than loyalty. The army is exhausted, the treasury hollow. Yet enthusiasm, at least in the capital, burns bright. Religious leaders bless the war as a chance to cleanse corruption and reclaim glory. German officers in spiked helmets salute alongside Ottoman generals in tasseled fezzes, awkwardly smiling for photographers. In private, they exchange grim looks. Both sides know this partnership is built on mutual necessity, not trust. By mid-November, the propaganda presses are rolling. Posters depict heroic soldiers defending Islam against the infidel. But if you listen closely in the bazaars, you'll hear another tone: anxious, weary, uncertain. Traders from Aleppo mutter that the British control the seas. Peasants from Anatolia complain that new taxes will starve their families. The empire is fracturing along invisible seams, and yet, for a brief moment, it feels like destiny is at hand. Across the Muslim world, whispers spread that the Sultan, as Caliph, will soon declare a jihad, a holy struggle against the Allied invaders. German diplomats encourage the idea, hoping uprisings in India and Egypt will distract Britain. Enver Pasha imagines millions rising in his name. You can almost see him pacing the marble halls of the war ministry, confident that divine favor and clever strategy will restore imperial pride. Still, even the most fervent believers can sense that this war will be unlike any before. The empire's armies must fight in snowbound passes, burning deserts, and swamp-choked rivers. Supply lines stretch over mountains where mules freeze standing up. Field hospitals run out of bandages before the first major battle. Somewhere in the Caucasus, a conscript scribbles a letter home. They say we fight for faith, but my toes are already gone to frost. The world is watching. In London, the Times calls the Black Sea raid an act of folly by a dying empire. In Berlin, newspapers hail it as proof that the Ottomans still have teeth. In Cairo, British officers eye their maps nervously, realizing the Suez Canal might soon be under threat. And in the palaces of Constantinople, the Sultan prays for victory even as his advisors whisper about famine and rebellion. Historians still argue whether the Ottomans could have remained neutral. Some claim Britain's seizure of those two dreadnoughts made war inevitable. Others insist that Enver Pasha's vanity was the true culprit. What's certain is that the raid on Odessa set a chain reaction in motion. Within weeks, soldiers would be dying in the snow of the Caucasus, the mud of Mesopotamia, and the dunes of Sinai. Each front a reminder that empires, like men, rarely choose the manner of their undoing. For now, though, the ships slip back through the Black Sea night, their decks littered with spent shell casings glinting under the stars. Behind them, Odessa smolders. The crews celebrate with sweet tea and nervous laughter. They've made history, though none will live long enough to enjoy its rewards. You lean on the railing, feeling the cold wind off the water, and wonder whether anyone truly wins when the first shot is fired. 2 weeks pass after the raid on Odessa, and the capital hums with tension. Constantinople wakes to the echo of the Sultan's decree, a royal edict proclaimed beneath the golden domes of the Fatih Mosque. Courtiers, clerics, soldiers, and foreign advisors all gather as the muezzins call out the words that change everything. A jihad is declared. Officially, it is a holy war against the enemies of Islam, but everyone knows it's also a political gamble, one that hopes to ignite the loyalty of millions across the empire and beyond. You can almost see the scene. Sunlight cutting through incense smoke. Calligraphers dipping pens in black ink to copy the Sultan's order on parchment scrolls. Riders gallop from the city gates, carrying the message eastward, across Anatolia, Syria, and Arabia, like a spark seeking dry grass. And for a moment, it seems to work. From the pulpits of Damascus to the courtyards of Mosul, sermons echo with promises of divine victory. Yet, beneath the piety lingers fear. Every trader, peasant, and cleric knows the empire is stretched thin, its loyalties frayed. The Ottoman Sultan Mehmed V is an old man now, more a symbol than a ruler. The real power lies with the triumvirate of the Young Turks, Enver, Talat, and Jamal Pasha. They dream not of holy crusades, but of national revival through blood and steel. To them, this jihad is propaganda, a tool to rally their fractured subjects. They hope to unify Turks, Arabs, Kurds, and Circassians under a single cause. But anyone who's ever tried to herd cats will know how that goes. Some respond with genuine zeal. Religious students in Konya volunteer for the army, convinced they're defending Islam from European tyranny. Others roll their eyes. In cosmopolitan Beirut and Salonika, the call to jihad lands with a dull thud. People there speak French, read European newspapers, and wonder what good it does to declare war on the world. In the coffee houses of Damascus, old veterans of the Balkan Wars mutter, "Another round of blood for another man's glory." Still, the propaganda machine churns relentlessly. German pamphlets printed in Arabic promise liberation for all Muslims oppressed by Britain, France, or Russia. Kaiser Wilhelm himself had once tried to style himself as a friend of Islam. Now, his envoys assure the Ottomans that victory will be swift. They talk about modern artillery, efficient logistics, and railroads stretching to Baghdad. They forget to mention that most Ottoman units are still marching on foot, and that modern artillery often means guns from the 1870s, dragged by oxen. Historians still argue whether the proclamation of jihad truly mattered. Some say it stirred revolts from Libya to Afghanistan. Others claim it was little more than political theater, a desperate empire playing dress-up in divine armor. What's certain is that the message travels far beyond its borders. In British India, Muslim soldiers serving under the Union Jack find themselves torn between faith and duty. In Egypt, under British occupation, imams tread carefully, avoiding sermons that might sound too sympathetic to the caliph's call. The idea of a worldwide Islamic uprising never materializes, but the fear of one keeps colonial administrators awake at night. Back in Constantinople, the declaration changes the mood of the streets. Soldiers march past the Galata Bridge singing patriotic songs, while vendors sell postcards of Ottoman troops standing shoulder to shoulder with German allies. Schoolboys collect brass buttons from returning veterans, polishing them like treasures. Women sew uniforms until their fingers bleed. And yet, in the alleyways behind the bazaars, beggars multiply, food prices skyrocket, and rumors of shortages grow. You can almost smell the sweat and stale bread in the markets, the quiet anxiety before the storm. Talat Pasha, the Minister of the Interior, sees an opportunity in this chaos. He begins reorganizing the empire's population, a euphemism for something darker. Armenians, Greeks, and Assyrians are labeled as potential traitors, suspected of sympathizing with Russia. At first, it's just talk of relocation for security reasons. Later, those words will echo through empty villages and death marches. But for now, in 1914, most people can't imagine the scale of what's coming. In the countryside, recruitment grows frantic. Ottoman officials scavenge for men, beasts, and grain. Farmers hide their sons in barns. Shepherds bribe gendarmes to look the other way. The empire's railways, one of the few modern systems it possesses, begin choking under the strain of troop movements. Carts overloaded with sacks of flour roll toward the front, only to vanish into the mud. At one station, a German officer records in his diary that an entire train of medical supplies was accidentally filled with watermelons instead of ammunition. Quirky? Yes. Tragic? Absolutely. The mood is schizophrenic, equal parts religious fervor and bureaucratic panic. Imagine the contradictions. An imam blessing a regiment with holy water, while a German engineer measures the angle of a new cannon. On the same street,
You might see a barefoot soldier kissing his rifle before boarding a train, while behind him, an Austrian liaison officer calculates rations down to the gram. It's a collision of centuries, medieval faith and modern war, meeting awkwardly in the same trench.
And as winter deepens, the empire's leaders look north. Enver Pasha, restless and proud, believes he can redeem centuries of decline by striking Russia through the Caucasus. His logic is simple, if delusional. A swift, glorious victory will unite the empire, silence dissent, and perhaps even inspire Turkic uprisings in Central Asia. He ignores warnings about snow, supply lines, and altitude. He pictures himself a new Alexander, conquering eastward beneath the crescent banner. His German advisors shake their heads quietly, but none dare oppose him. So while Constantinople celebrates the Sultan's call to holy war, trains are already carrying thousands of men toward the mountains. Peasants in thin wool coats, half of them without boots, some sharing rifles. They sing as they go, voices cracking in the cold air, unaware that most will never return. Along the way, locals watch them pass and whisper prayers for their souls. Children chase the trains, waving scraps of cloth that vanish into the steam. The call to jihad, meant to inspire unity, ends up exposing division. Arabs wonder why Turkish officers treat them as inferiors. Kurds question why their sons die for lands far away. Even devout soldiers begin asking quiet questions, not about faith, but about food. If God is on our side, one private reportedly jokes, why are his supply lines always late? You can't help but admire the irony. A holy war declared by an empire already running out of bread. By December, Constantinople's docks groan with foreign coal shipments rationed by German contracts. Bakeries post armed guards. Hospitals fill with frostbitten soldiers shipped back from the front even before the first major battle begins. The empire has entered the war not as a rising power, but as a crumbling house pretending its foundations are firm. And yet, somehow, there's still hope in the air, or maybe just stubborn pride. The minarets of the capital glow at sunset, muezzins calling across the Bosporus as soldiers kneel on the decks of transports, their rifles stacked neatly beside them. The waters shimmer gold and crimson. For a moment, even you could almost believe the propaganda that the old empire, born of conquest and prayer, might yet find redemption in war. But you know how this story ends. The call to jihad will echo across deserts and mountains, yes, but it will not save the empire. It will drive men to impossible fronts, to frozen valleys like Sarikamish, where faith meets frostbite, and where the dream of glory finally freezes solid. You can almost feel the chill already, rolling down from the Caucasus peaks, carrying whispers of what's to come. You wake to a sound, not of cannon fire, but of wind. The war has widened, and its edges stretch like a map spilling over your desk. From the Black Sea to the Persian Gulf, from the snows of the Caucasus to the dunes of Arabia, the Ottoman Empire now finds itself fighting on every horizon at once. The Middle Eastern theater of the First World War isn't one battlefield. It's a labyrinth, mountains, deserts, and deltas where empires lose not only armies, but their sense of direction. If you were to hover above it all, like some weary angel of geography, you'd see the vastness of it. The Ottoman heartland bridging 3 continents. To the north, the Caucasus front rises in icy layers, where avalanches bury regiments whole. To the south, the Mesopotamian plain stretches brown and glistening under the sun, a soup of mud and malaria. To the west, the Sinai and Palestine fronts shimmer like heat itself, punctuated by lonely ridges and mirages of palm trees that vanish as you approach. And far to the south, the Hijaz, all dust, dates, and tribal banners, begins to stir with revolt. Historians still argue whether the empire ever truly had a grand strategy. Some say Enver Pasha imagined the fronts as connected lines of destiny, North against Russia, south against Britain, west against Egypt. Others insist it was pure chaos, an old machine coughing to life wherever sparks landed. Either way, it's a logistical nightmare. The Ottoman army is divided into regional commands, each short on everything that matters: ammunition, mules, doctors, even shoes. The Caucasus front is the first to move, a desperate gamble in snow and shadow. But while Enver's armies freeze, the empire must also defend its far-flung borders. In Mesopotamia, British Indian troops land at Basra in November 1914, claiming to protect oil interests. But everyone knows they intend to push north toward Baghdad. In the Sinai, Ottoman scouts peer across the desert at the faint outline of British outposts guarding the Suez Canal. And in the distant sands of Arabia, whispers travel along the camel routes. The Sharif of Mecca, guardian of Islam's holiest cities, is growing restless under Ottoman rule. You stand in the middle of this world, surrounded by clashing motives: religion, nationalism, imperial ambition, all twisting together like desert smoke. The Sultan's call to jihad rings hollow here. Arabs mutter that the Caliph in Constantinople has become a puppet of German infidels. Turks grumble that Arabs are lazy and ungrateful. British intelligence officers, always eager to fan division, quietly take notes. The empire is fighting not one war, but several wars that only happen to share the same calendar. On the Caucasus front, it's a war of snow and starvation. In Mesopotamia, a war of rivers and heat stroke. In Sinai and Palestine, a war of water bottles and camel trains. In the Hijaz, a war of telegrams, gold coins, and promises written in sand. Each front eats men, money, and faith in equal measure. A quirky tidbit? The Ottoman army actually issued survival pamphlets to soldiers heading to different fronts. Little booklets explaining how to treat camel bites, avoid frostbite, or identify scorpions. They might as well have printed, "Good luck, you'll need it." Most soldiers can't read them anyway. In Anatolia, railways become the empire's arteries. The Germans work feverishly to complete the Berlin-Baghdad railway, a steel umbilical cord meant to deliver troops and supplies deep into Mesopotamia. But the tracks end miles short of where they're needed, forcing everything, artillery, tents, food, to travel by mule or foot. A single artillery shell might take 3 weeks to reach the front, only to arrive without its fuse. Meanwhile, the empire's enemies fight different enemies in the same space. The British want oil and sea routes. The Russians want warm water ports and access to Persia. The French dream of carving new colonies from Ottoman flesh. And caught between them, the people. Arabs, Armenians, Kurds, Turks, Persians, Jews, Greeks, Assyrians, each with their own hopes, fears, and grudges. The front lines move, but villages stay put, absorbing every passing army like tides on a beach. You can picture it, a convoy of ox carts inching across the desert, soldiers trudging past date palms and minarets, barefoot boys staring at their reflections in puddles of spilled oil. Every direction smells of something different: diesel, incense, blood, camel dung. The landscape itself seems to conspire against both sides. In the Caucasus, frost kills faster than bullets. In Mesopotamia, rivers flood overnight, drowning entire camps. In Sinai, men die of thirst within sight of the sea. The empire's communications crumble. Telegrams take weeks. Orders arrive after battles are lost. In Damascus, an officer jokes that he can send a letter to Berlin faster than he can get food to Gaza. "At least the Germans have trains that work," he mutters. It's dark humor, but laughter is cheaper than rations. The British are better supplied, but not immune to the land's cruelty. Their Indian troops march in wool uniforms through 45 degrees Celsius heat. Their officers dine on tinned sardines, while the rank and file chew on sand. When dysentery sweeps the camps, the trenches smell like open graves. On the Ottoman side, soldiers boil their own belts for soup. The war becomes not a contest of weapons, but of endurance. You can't shake the sense that the Middle East itself is the real winner, or maybe the executioner. It swallows armies the way the sea swallows ships. Cities that have existed for millennia, Mosul, Aleppo, Damascus, Baghdad, see the same pattern play out. Flags raised, flags torn down, new uniforms parading through old streets. And every time, it's the civilians who pay. In Jerusalem, Christian priests, Muslim imams, and Jewish rabbis quietly pray for the same thing, that the armies will march past without noticing them. In Baghdad, date sellers raise prices by the hour, betting on chaos. In the mountain villages of eastern Anatolia, Armenian families whisper about deportations, not yet realizing that relocation will soon mean annihilation. Historians still argue how to measure this theater's importance. On one hand, it's a sideshow compared to the industrial slaughter of the Western Front. On the other, its consequences ripple far beyond 1918. The disintegration of the Ottoman Empire will redraw maps, invent countries, and plant seeds of conflict that still bloom today. A German staff officer later writes, "The sand of Arabia was more dangerous than the mud of Flanders. It swallowed alliances as easily as men." Meanwhile, Enver Pasha's grand dreams collide with reality. His armies freeze at Sarikamish, but he remains convinced that a united Islamic front can still strike fear into the Allies. He promises victory in Mesopotamia and triumph in Egypt, as if the empire's sheer faith might compensate for missing boots. You want to believe him. There's something tragic and magnetic about his confidence. But even the stars seem tired of shining over so many graves. As 1915 dawns, the empire groans under the weight of its own ambition. The fronts are drawn. To the north, Russia. To the south, Britain. To the west, the Suez Canal, a shimmering line the Ottomans dream of crossing. And somewhere in between, the Arab lands stir uneasily, their loyalties cracking under the strain of war. You glance at the map again, so wide it barely fits your vision, and realize something haunting. Every front here is less about winning and more about surviving. The war in the Middle East is not just about who holds what territory, but about whether an empire that once spanned 3 continents can still hold itself together. And as the trains whistle into the distance, loaded with soldiers who will never return, the answer begins to take shape in the cold wind sweeping down from the Caucasus. Snow falls silently over the Caucasus, covering everything: rifles, bodies, even the flags that mark the front lines. The wind here has no mercy. It slices through wool, through skin, through resolve. You can taste the cold, metallic and dry, like breathing through a rusted pipe. Somewhere among these frozen ridges, Enver Pasha's grand vision is about to shatter. It's December 1914, and the Ottoman Third Army has begun its march toward the Russian fortress city of Sarikamish. Enver, freshly promoted to Minister of War and drunk on dreams of glory, believes he can outflank the Russians, encircle their forces, and deliver a stunning victory that will rally Muslims across Central Asia. To him, the Caucasus campaign isn't just a battle. It's a crusade for the soul of the empire. His German advisors, especially General Bronsart von Schellendorf, tried to dissuade him. The troops are exhausted, the supplies minimal, the weather lethal. Enver waves off their concerns. "We will surprise them," he insists. You trudge with the soldiers as they leave the city of Erzurum, marching east toward the mountains. Most are peasant conscripts from Anatolia, ill-equipped and poorly clothed. Some wear sandals, others wrap rags around their feet. A few lucky ones have rifles, but ammunition is scarce. Still, morale glimmers faintly. The men sing patriotic songs and mutter prayers into their scarves. They have faith in Enver Pasha, or perhaps they just have no choice. The first days are bearable. The air is crisp, the snow knee-deep, but manageable. Then, as the army ascends to altitudes above 2,000 meters, the weather turns monstrous. Temperatures plunge below -30 degrees Celsius. The snow becomes a white wall. Horses collapse mid-step. The men stumble blindly, guided only by the sound of the soldier in front of them. Those who stop to rest, even for a minute, never rise again. Historians still argue whether the defeat at Sarikamish was born from arrogance or ignorance. Some point to Enver's blind belief in rapid mobility. Others cite a complete lack of logistics. Whatever the cause, the result is the same: catastrophe. The Ottomans, who started with nearly 90,000 men, will soon be reduced to barely 10,000 survivors. You picture the night of 30 December 1914, a blizzard roaring through the passes of Allahu Ekber Dalari, the mountains of God is Great. Soldiers cling to one another for warmth, but frost forms even on their eyelashes. Rifles freeze solid. Commanders lose their way, units march in circles, and the snow swallows the living and the dead alike. One officer later recalls finding an entire battalion frozen in formation, still holding their rifles upright, as if guarding the silence. By the time the first survivors reach the outskirts of Sarikamish, the Russians are waiting. Their commander, General Yudanich, has fortified the town with rail-supplied troops and artillery. The Ottomans stumble out of the forest, starving, frostbitten, half delirious. The battle that follows is not really a fight. It's an execution. Russian machine guns rake the snowfields. Ottoman soldiers drop where they stand. Some try to surrender, waving scraps of white cloth, but the blizzard makes everyone look like ghosts. A fringe tidbit. Russian officers report that some Ottoman troops, desperate for warmth, tried to light campfires using their own wooden rifle stocks. The flames wouldn't catch. The air was too thin, the wood too wet. Enver Pasha, ever defiant, reaches the front briefly to witness the devastation. He blames his subordinates for the disaster and insists that victory was close. Then he retreats to Constantinople, his dream of a Turanian empire buried beneath the snow. In his absence, disease finishes what the Russians began. Typhus spreads through the survivors. The dead are stacked like firewood along the roads back to Erzurum. And yet, amid this ruin, something strange happens. Faith does not die, it hardens. Many soldiers, those who somehow survive, begin to see the catastrophe not as failure, but as divine test. God froze the weak to purify the strong, one imam preaches to the remnants of the Third Army. The logic is grim, but it keeps them moving. Far away, in the warmth of Berlin, German officers shake their heads. They had warned Enver this would happen. To them, Sarikamish is proof that the Ottoman command cannot be trusted with major operations. But for the Ottomans themselves, it becomes a wound that festers quietly, a source of both shame and stubborn pride. "We froze," one veteran says years later, "but at least we froze together." The human cost ripples outward. Villages across eastern Anatolia are emptied of men. Families wait months for news that never comes. Mothers send sons to fetch brothers who vanished in the snow, and neither returns. Famine spreads as horses and livestock are requisitioned for the army. In Erzurum, the dead are so numerous that dogs are banned from the streets for fear they'll dig up corpses. Enver, however, still imagines himself a man of destiny. He orders a new offensive, though it will take years for the army to recover. His political allies in Constantinople defend him, calling Sarikamish a necessary sacrifice. Meanwhile, Talat and Jamal Pasha focus on consolidating control over the home front, tightening censorship, enforcing loyalty, and ominously planning relocations of populations deemed unreliable. If you close your eyes, you can almost hear the contrast. In the mountains, wind howling through frozen helmets. In the capital, typewriters clicking in warm offices as decrees are signed and sealed. The empire fights its enemies abroad, but also begins to turn against itself. Historians still debate whether Enver's dream of uniting Turkic peoples ever had a chance. Some call it romantic nationalism, others, sheer fantasy. What's undeniable is that Sarıkamış marks a turning point, the moment when the Ottoman army's confidence breaks. From here on, every front becomes a struggle for survival, not conquest. And yet, the story doesn't end with defeat. The Russians, too, pay a heavy price. Their casualties number in the tens of thousands. Supply lines collapse under snowdrifts, and disease stalks their trenches as well. For a brief time, both armies simply stop fighting. Not out of truce, but exhaustion. The mountains themselves enforce peace. When spring finally arrives, it doesn't bring relief, only revelation. As the snow melts, it reveals what winter has hidden. Bodies frozen mid-step, rifles still clutched in hands, eyes open toward a sky they never saw again. The villagers who find them whisper prayers and pile stones into rough cairns. The empire moves on, but the mountains remember. If you're still listening, still awake, you can feel that cold lingering in your bones. It's the kind of chill that seeps deeper than flesh, the kind that makes empires tremble. You realize now that this war won't be about glorious victories or swift campaigns. It will be about endurance, how long a people can hold their breath while the world around them collapses. The wind dies down. Snowdrifts settle. Somewhere far below, a telegraph line hums faintly with messages from Constantinople, carrying new orders for a new campaign. Enver Pasha will try again, in other places, under other suns, but Sarıkamış will always follow him, a ghost in the snow, whispering that even ambition can freeze to death. The snows melt, and with them, whatever illusions of glory remained. Out of the Caucasus come the survivors, skeletal, frost-bitten men wrapped in rags, stumbling through mud instead of snow now. They no longer sing, they only breathe, each exhale a ghost. What they bring home is not victory, but silence, and stories too awful to retell. You trudge beside them on the road back to Erzurum. The mountains behind you look calm again, as if they hadn't just devoured an army. Enver Pasha calls Sarıkamış a setback. Everyone else calls it a massacre. Across Anatolia, the news trickles out. Fathers who never returned. Villages that have lost every able-bodied man. Horses gone. Food gone. Faith shaken. At night, in towns like Erzincan, the mosques fill with widows whispering the same prayer. Why did God test us this way? The imams have no answer. Even the German officers posted in the region keep their distance. They write home about an army that froze and still believes it must have deserved it. Historians still argue whether Enver's defeat broke the empire's confidence or hardened it into something darker. Some claim it shattered any hope of unity. Others say it planted the seed of rage that would soon turn inward. Because what happens after Sarıkamış isn't only military, it's social, psychological, and moral. The empire begins to suspect its own people. In Constantinople, Enver returns to pomp and fanfare, but behind closed doors, he rages. He blames betrayal, spies, Armenians supposedly aiding the Russians. His allies nod, relieved to have a scapegoat. The frostbitten survivors limp into barracks and find their rations halved, their losses written off as necessary. Rumors swirl that God punished them for disloyalty, not for poor planning. You sit in a smoky tea house where an old officer tells the story to anyone who'll listen. They said we were marching to glory, he mutters, but the only glory I saw was white and endless. His hands shake as he cups his glass. Outside, children play in the thawing mud, pretending to be soldiers. They don't know they're reenacting a funeral. Meanwhile, typhus begins to spread, one more enemy the empire can't afford. In the army hospitals of Erzurum, Doctors run out of medicine. They rub onions on wounds, pray, and move on to the next cot. The nurses bury the dead at night when the snow hides the smell. A quirky tidbit. The Ottoman military tried to issue frost ointment, a mix of goose fat and lamp oil, to prevent frostbite. It arrived weeks after the battle, during spring. Soldiers joked it was better suited for frying eggs. In the capital, the triumvirate, Enver, Talat, and Jamal, tighten their grip. They censor the newspapers, forbidding any mention of the losses. Official bulletins claim a minor engagement with strategic withdrawal, but the truth travels faster than ink. Letters smuggled from the front describe fields of frozen men, officers shooting their own horses for meat, soldiers praying for bullets instead of rescue. Religious leaders are torn. Some cling to the jihad narrative, calling Sarikamish a martyr's victory in heaven. Others see it as proof that the empire's soul has rotted. The mystics whisper that divine favor has fled. The soldiers, too numb for philosophy, just keep walking. As spring brightens Anatolia, the contrast grows unbearable. Blossoms bloom over the graves of the Third Army. Families return to till their fields, but there's no one left to harvest. The empire starts eating itself from within. Bread prices triple. Peasants flee conscription, hiding in caves or forests. Desertion becomes epidemic. One report claims more men are shot for fleeing than for cowardice. And in this atmosphere of fear and scarcity, suspicion takes root. The government accuses entire communities of collusion with the Russians. Armenian villagers in the east find soldiers at their doors, demanding loyalty oaths. What begins as paranoia will soon evolve into policy. But that's another darkness still forming beyond the horizon. For now, the mountains hold the memory of Sarikamish like a scar across the empire's skin. Enver refuses to learn from it. He insists the army must redeem itself. He speaks of new fronts, new triumphs. He's already looking south, toward Mesopotamia, where British forces have landed and where, perhaps, the empire can prove it's still alive. Yet, among the rank and file, faith changes shape. Soldiers stop praying for victory. They pray to survive. A mullah traveling with one division notes in his journal, "Men do not ask for paradise anymore. They ask for bread and dry socks." That's as close to a sermon as anyone dares. One evening, you find yourself on the edge of a camp outside Erzurum. The air smells of wet earth and coal smoke. A soldier sits beside you, carving something into a rifle stock. When you ask what he's writing, he grins weakly. "If I die, my ghost knows who to blame." Then he hands you a crust of bread, his entire dinner. You realize generosity still flickers, even here. Historians still debate the numbers. 70,000 dead? 90? Some argue fewer. But no statistic captures the real loss. The empire's belief that destiny favored it. Sarikamish stripped that illusion bare. From now on, every campaign will carry its ghost. In the capital, Enver delivers speeches full of hollow fire. "We have been tested, and we are stronger." Crowds cheer. The newspapers print patriotic poems. But at the docks, widows gather quietly to meet hospital ships, clutching photographs of men who never saw the sea. Somewhere in the palace, the Sultan listens to his advisors quarrel about famine, refugees, and rebellion. His empire is bleeding from the edges, yet the map still looks impressive. It's always that way with dying empires. They look whole until the moment they collapse. You can almost smell spring in the air now. Damp soil, rotting wood, gun oil. The war moves on. The Ottoman army will march again. Into deserts this time, not mountains. The men who froze at Sarikamish will be replaced by those who burn at Basra and Kut. The pattern repeats. Too far, too fast, too sure. But the ghosts of the Caucasus follow. In every sandstorm, in every desert mirage, the survivors will see snow. They will remember the feeling of rifles turning to ice, of comrades buried alive by the weather. The empire may command them south, but part of them is still trapped in that frozen pass where ambition died. And as night falls over Erzurum, you look up at the stars. They seem impossibly bright. The same stars that shone over Sarikamish weeks ago. You realize they'll still be shining long after this empire and this war are gone. But for now, the soldiers sleep under them, shivering in thin blankets, dreaming of warmth that never comes. The war drifts south now, away from the mountains and into the mud. The Caucasus freezes behind you like a bad dream as the next chapter opens in Mesopotamia, a land of reeds, rivers, and unrelenting sun. Here, the air itself seems to sweat. Even before you smell the oil or the decay of flooded fields, you taste the heat on your tongue. It's late 1914, and British Indian troops have landed at the port of Fao at the head of the Persian Gulf. Officially, they're here to protect British interests, which sounds tidy on paper. Unofficially, everyone knows what those interests are: oil. The Anglo-Persian oil company's pipelines snake through this land, feeding the Royal Navy's thirst for fuel. The British Empire intends to keep them safe, and perhaps, while they're at it, take Baghdad too. Across the Tigris, the Ottomans scramble. Their garrisons are small, scattered, and starved of supplies. Mesopotamia has long been one of the empire's forgotten provinces. Flat, fever-ridden, more swamp than soil. When Enver Pasha sends orders to defend Basra at all costs, local commanders shrug. With what army? With what guns? The British, under General Sir John Nixon, advance quickly. The Indian Expeditionary Force, mostly Punjabi and Gurkha troops under British officers, moves upriver in paddle steamers and barges, their decks stacked with supplies. They wear khaki and optimism in equal measure. Early skirmishes go their way. Basra falls in November 1914. The newspapers in London call it a splendid little campaign. You know what that phrase always means: the calm before something dreadful. Historians still argue whether the British advance beyond Basra was ambition or arrogance. Some claim Nixon wanted to secure Baghdad to impress the War Office. Others say it was simply momentum, success creating the illusion of invincibility. Either way, the troops push north, deeper into the Tigris Delta, where the rivers twist like snakes and every mile becomes a logistical nightmare. The Ottomans regroup around Kut al-Amara, a sleepy town perched on a bend in the river. Its mud brick walls are hardly a fortress, but it sits astride the route to Baghdad, a natural choke point. The Ottoman commander, Halil Bey, fortifies what he can, digging trenches and calling up tribal levies. German advisors arrive, unimpressed by what they see. One notes in his diary, "The men are brave, but their boots are made of prayer." Meanwhile, British officers complain that the land itself is their worst enemy. The Tigris and Euphrates flood unpredictably, drowning tents and drowning men. Mosquitoes rise in black clouds at dusk. The summer heat cooks food inside tins. Horses die by the hundreds, their carcasses swelling in the sun. The British Medical Corps calls Mesopotamia the Empire's Fever Bowl. Soldiers just call it hell. And yet, the campaign grinds on. Steam launches ferry troops upriver, while supply convoys slog through mud that swallows boots to the ankle. The Ottomans fight with cunning, striking supply lines, vanishing into the reeds, then reappearing miles away. The British curse their persistence and secretly admire it. A quirky tidbit: to fight mosquitoes, some British units rubbed themselves with a homemade repellent of kerosene and rum. It worked about as well as you'd expect. They smelled like drunks on fire. By spring 1915, the British reach Amara, then Nasiriyah. Each victory stretches their lines thinner. Baghdad gleams temptingly just 100 miles upstream, shimmering in the heat haze. Nixon orders General Charles Townsend to take it. Townsend, an ambitious officer with a flair for self-promotion, believes he can pull it off. "We shall dine in Baghdad by Christmas," he boasts. Famous last words, as always. The Ottoman command, reeling from Sarikamish, now finds in Mesopotamia a chance for redemption. Reinforcements trickle in from Anatolia and Syria. Among them are veterans of the Caucasus, men who've learned what suffering really means. When they arrive and see the swampy plains, they laugh bitterly. "At least here," one says, "the ground is soft enough to dig our own graves." You march with them through date groves and marshland, the air thick with flies. The smell of stagnant water clings to everything. The Ottoman lines hold just long enough to lure the British deeper inland, where the rivers bend and narrow. In early December, the two sides clash at Ctesiphon, the ruins of an ancient Persian capital. It's a ghost city, broken arches, cracked stones, dust glowing red under the sun. The battle lasts 3 days. The British attack in waves, bayonets gleaming. The Ottomans hold fast behind sandbag walls. Cannon thunder across the plain, echoing against the ruins. At one point, both armies run out of water and fight with parched mouths, their canteens long empty. The casualties are staggering on both sides. Townsend claims victory, then retreats anyway. Historians still debate who actually won at Ctesiphon. The British hold the field but are too shattered to advance. The Ottomans withdraw briefly, only to return stronger. What's certain is that Townsend's army, exhausted and diseased, limps back downriver to Kut al-Amara. There, he digs in for what he believes will be a short rest. Instead, it becomes a siege that will define the misery of this front. Back in Constantinople, the War Ministry celebrates the defense as a moral triumph. For once, Ottoman troops have halted a major British offensive. Enver Pasha declares, "The spirit of the Turk is unbroken." His speechwriters conveniently skip the part about dysentery and cholera doing half the work. But for the men in the trenches, there's no triumph, only mud, flies, and the endless buzz of heat. "The sun here," one soldier writes, "feels like a curse." The contrast to the Caucasus couldn't be starker. There, men froze to death. Here, they melt. The thermometer climbs to 50 degrees. Water becomes more precious than bullets. Entire platoons collapse from dehydration. The British try digging wells, only to find brackish, undrinkable sludge. The Ottomans suffer too, their supply lines strained and morale fragile. Yet, somehow, they hold. A few enterprising Ottoman officers recruit local Arab tribes to harass British convoys. These irregulars, riding camels and armed with old rifles, vanish into the horizon after every raid. To the British, they seem to materialize out of the sand. One exasperated officer calls them ghosts in the dunes. For the empire, Mesopotamia becomes both a distraction and a symbol. Even as famine looms in Anatolia and revolt brews in the Hejaz, the government trumpets victories here as proof that divine favor has returned. Newspapers print exaggerated maps showing British armies annihilated along the Tigris. In reality, both sides are too exhausted to move. You picture it at dusk. The river glowing copper, the air still as stone, soldiers crouched in trenches swatting mosquitoes. Somewhere, a gramophone plays a scratchy march tune. Somewhere else, a muezzin calls to prayer from a minaret leaning like a broken spear. It's beautiful and unbearable all at once, the kind of landscape that makes even generals doubt their purpose. As 1915 draws to a close, both armies dig in, waiting for reinforcements that will never come. The British are surrounded at Kut. The Ottomans, though barely better off, begin to sense an opportunity. They might just turn this forgotten corner of the war into their redemption story. But for now, you lie back on the riverbank and listen to the chorus of frogs and artillery in the distance. The war in Mesopotamia has only begun, and the desert is already thirsty for more. Kut al-Amara lies in a lazy curve of the Tigris River, the kind of town that should smell of dates and silt, not cordite and rot. But by winter 1915, it becomes the center of the world for two exhausted armies. You can see the scene. Mud huts pressed flat against the water, palm trunks hacked into barricades, the river itself choked with boats turned into floating gun platforms. Inside this loop of land, the British garrison waits, starving, sweating, and slowly realizing that no one is coming to save them. After the bloody stalemate at Ctesiphon, General Townsend had dragged his battered force back here, believing it a good place to rest and rebuild. The Ottoman army, under Halil Bey and reinforced by German advisors, simply followed and surrounded them. By early December, the trap had closed. The siege of Kut would last 147 days, long enough to break bodies, spirits, and illusions. At first, Townsend is confident. His troops, around 13,000 British and Indian soldiers, are well entrenched, their guns facing outward in a tight horseshoe along the river. "We can hold for months," he writes to his superiors. "Relief will come before the heat does." He might as well have wished for snow. The Ottoman forces settle in, digging their own lines, cutting telegraph wires, and intercepting supply barges. The Tigris, once a lifeline, becomes a noose. Inside Kut, rations dwindle fast. The horses go first, then the mules, then the dogs. By March, even the rats are disappearing. A soldier from the 6th Puna Division records that soup is made by boiling leather belts. "It tastes of nothing," he writes, "but it keeps the belly busy." Disease spreads faster than rumor. Scurvy, dysentery, cholera. The men's skin turns yellow from bad grain. Still, the British press send cheery dispatches home about a gallant little garrison holding firm. Historians still argue whether the real enemy here was the Ottomans or the Tigris itself. The British relief expeditions sent from Basra under General Aylmer learn that every mile upriver costs blood. The mud swallows artillery. The reeds conceal snipers. And when the spring floods come, the river turns into a brown avalanche that sweeps away pontoons and barges alike. The relief columns never make it through. Meanwhile, outside Kut, the Ottoman besiegers suffer their own torments. Their uniforms rot, their water supplies foul, and the corpses of their comrades bake in the sun. Yet morale grows. Every week that passes, the defenders inside grow weaker, while the Turks grow more confident. For the first time since the war began, the Ottoman army has an enemy trapped, and London knows it. Enver Pasha sees propaganda gold in the siege. He orders film crews to the front, hoping to record a glorious defense of Islam. The reality is less cinematic. Trenches fill with mud, lice, and prayers muttered in half a dozen languages. Turkish regulars fight alongside Kurdish and Arab levies. Some days, both sides pause just long enough to trade cigarettes across the no man's land before resuming the bombardment. Even hell, one Ottoman officer writes, has coffee breaks. A curious footnote. To boost morale, Ottoman soldiers sometimes played gramophone records of military marches toward the British lines at night. The recordings were so scratchy and slow that one Indian sepoy thought the Turks were chanting spells. Inside Kut, Townsend's optimism curdles into despair. He sends message after message to command. Situation critical. Request immediate assistance. London responds with empty reassurances and one disastrous idea after another. Airdrops are attempted using primitive biplanes, but most parcels fall into the river or straight into Ottoman trenches. One pilot later admits they were dropping flour sacks without parachutes. "We thought they'd bounce." By April 1916, starvation is total. Soldiers are seen chewing grass, some even boiling their own boots. The Indian troops, who form most of the garrison, suffer worst of all. Religious dietary restrictions become impossible to follow. They beg their officers for mercy or death. Townsend, confined to a tent, plays chess to distract himself. Outside, his men dig graves they no longer have strength to fill. Then, on 29th April 1916, the inevitable. A white flag rises over Kut. Townsend surrenders. Roughly 13,000 men lay down their arms. When Ottoman troops march into the town, they find little to plunder, only bones, scraps of leather, and the hollow eyes of survivors. The victory shocks the world. For Britain, it's the greatest humiliation since the fall of Singapore will be decades later. For the Ottomans, it's redemption, proof that they are not doomed relics, but still capable warriors. Crowds in Constantinople cheer. Newspapers proclaim, God has avenged Sarikamish. Enver Pasha, ever theatrical, rides through the city on horseback, declaring, Kut is the grave of British arrogance. But even in triumph, the costs are heavy. The Ottomans have lost nearly 10,000 men in the siege. Many of the prisoners they take will die on the long march to Anatolia, starved, beaten, and abandoned. Historians still argue whether it was neglect or cruelty, but the result is the same. Out of 13,000 captured, fewer than half survive captivity. For the locals of Mesopotamia, victory and defeat look the same. Towns along the river are burned or abandoned, their crops trampled, their wells fouled. Date palms, the region's lifeblood, are cut down for firewood. The Tigris runs black with oil from destroyed barges. You imagine standing there at dusk, watching the sky turn red, knowing that every empire that comes here eventually leaves the same scars. After Kut, the British reassess everything. They pour reinforcements into the theater, build proper supply lines, and replace every officer associated with the disaster. By 1917, they will be back, this time under General Maud, and they will indeed take Baghdad. But that's later. For now, Kut is a grave marker, both literal and symbolic. Inside the Ottoman ranks, pride glows bright but brief. Many soldiers believe the victory will end the war. The English are finished, one sergeant writes home. We will be home by harvest. He is wrong, of course. New fronts open every month. Sinai, Palestine, Arabia. Each will demand the same price in blood and exhaustion. The empire's leaders don't see it that way. To them, Kut is proof of divine favor restored. The sermons in Constantinople thunder with triumph. The infidels are crushed. Yet bread prices rise, coal runs out, and families still starve. Glory does not feed the people. In Aleppo and Damascus, merchants whisper that victory is just another word for delay. If you wander through the ruins of Kut today, you can still trace the outlines of trenches under the palms. The river murmurs the same as it did in 1916, indifferent as ever. You can almost hear the ghosts, Townsend's chess pieces clicking on a makeshift board, Ottoman sentries laughing softly in disbelief that the British had actually surrendered. The siege leaves behind more than corpses. It cements an idea that the Middle East is not the empire's periphery, but its heart of endurance. When the Western Front seems mechanical and distant, here the war feels ancient. Men fighting over rivers that have seen 1,000 empires come and go. The difference is only the uniforms. And as you drift down the Tigris in your mind, the evening wind carrying the smell of dust and gun oil, you realize that nothing about this campaign was little. It was vast and cruel and personal. A story of pride baked under a Mesopotamian sun until it cracked. Far to the west of the Tigris, beyond the Fertile Crescent and the shimmer of the date groves, another front awakens under the desert sun. It is early 1915 when the Ottoman High Command turns its gaze toward Egypt, the crown jewel of Britain's empire. There, the Suez Canal gleams like a silver blade cutting through the sand, guarded by British, Australian, and Indian troops, and flanked by the red, white, and blue of the Union Jack. Enver Pasha dreams that if he can strike this artery, Britain's imperial heart will falter. And so begins one of the strangest offensives of the war, a desert march into oblivion. You can imagine the scene. The wind over the Sinai Peninsula never stops. It whispers through dunes and carries sand like smoke. The sun burns white, and the horizon wavers as if the earth itself were melting. Into this furnace trudges the Ottoman Fourth Army under Jamal Pasha, commander of the Southern Front and self-styled Lion of the Desert. Behind him march tens of thousands of soldiers, camels groaning under loads of water, engineers dragging pontoons meant to bridge the canal. The plan sounds simple: cross the Sinai, attack the Suez, and cut Britain's lifeline to India. But on a map, deserts always look smaller than they feel. The men march hundreds of kilometers over shifting dunes, sleeping in shallow trenches to escape the wind. The sand finds everything: inside boots, between teeth, in rifle chambers. A German officer attached to Jamal's staff writes, "We are fighting geography more than the English." Historians still debate whether the offensive was Enver's idea or Jamal's vanity project. Some say Berlin urged it to divert British forces from Europe. Others claim it was pure Ottoman bravado. Either way, it begins disastrously. Supply columns fall behind. Water convoys lose their way. Soldiers collapse and are buried by the dunes. The desert keeps its secrets, one survivor later murmurs. By the time the Ottoman vanguard reaches the canal in early February 1915, it is already too late. The British defenders have dug in behind barbed wire and machine guns, with warships anchored in the canal itself. The Ottomans attack at dawn on the 3rd of February, ferries and rafts creaking across the water. The first wave makes it halfway before the British open fire. The air fills with dust and shouting. The canal churns with bullets and bodies. A quirky tidbit: some Ottoman soldiers, believing the canal could be forded on foot, wade in, only to discover it's twice as wide and deep as they imagined. A few try swimming with rifles held over their heads, but the current pulls them under. Within hours, the attack collapses. Jamal orders a retreat, furious but unbroken. The casualties are heavy, hundreds dead, thousands wounded or lost to thirst on the way back. Yet he claims a moral victory in his report to Constantinople. The soldiers of Islam reached the gates of Egypt. Enver Pasha, ever the showman, praises the effort publicly while privately vowing never to trust Jamal with another offensive. The British breathe easier, but not for long. They know the Sinai is too vast to leave undefended. Within months, they begin building an infrastructure of war: pipelines, railways, telegraph lines, steel arteries threading through sand. Each track laid is a promise that next time, they'll be the ones crossing the desert. Meanwhile, on the Ottoman side, Jamal Pasha remains in command of Syria and Palestine. He governs with equal parts vanity and brutality, turning Damascus into his personal fiefdom. He decorates streets with banners proclaiming loyalty to the Sultan, even as famine creeps through Lebanon. To the locals, he is both protector and tyrant, the man who builds schools one day and orders mass hangings the next. The war in the desert becomes as much about survival as ideology. You pass through one of his camps at El Arish, where soldiers chew on dates and dried bread, their uniforms bleached by sun and salt. Some write home, boasting that they fought the English beside the canal. Others confess what really happened. "We saw the ships," one private scrawls, "and they were taller than mosques." Historians still argue whether the Suez campaign was folly or necessity. Some see it as a symbol of Ottoman resolve, others as a tragic waste of lives for a symbolic victory that never came. What's clear is that it changes how both sides see the desert. The Ottomans learn the limits of endurance. The British learn the value of patience. The Sinai, once a void, becomes the hinge on which future campaigns will turn. The following year, 1916, the British go on the offensive. Their forces, now led by General Archibald Murray, march east from the canal, laying tracks as they go. Every few miles, a new outpost rises, a station with water tanks, radio masts, and rail spurs. The desert that once devoured armies becomes a road. Camels give way to trucks. Telegraph wires hum in the wind. The empire is learning how to conquer sand. The Ottomans resist where they can. Jamal's troops stage ambushes and raids, but their supplies are dwindling. The empire's arteries are clogged. Famine grips Anatolia, and morale bleeds away like water in the heat. By March 1917, the British reach Rafah, the threshold of Palestine. The Ottoman army braces for defense at Gaza. For now, though, you linger in the desert's silence, listening to its strange symphony. The creak of camel harnesses, the hiss of sand, the faint clang of tools as soldiers dig yet another trench into endless dunes. You notice how war here feels different, quieter, more personal. There are no roaring cannons or seas of barbed wire, only the slow grinding contest between thirst and endurance. A British officer notes in his diary, "We are fighting ghosts, and we are ghosts ourselves." He's right. The desert consumes identity. Uniforms fade to the same color, faces to the same squint. Even friend and enemy blur at a distance. At night, the stars explode across the sky, impossibly bright. You can almost hear the lullaby of history repeating itself. Pharaohs, crusaders, caliphs, and now modern soldiers marching the same paths, dreaming the same dreams of conquest and deliverance. It's hard to tell which side is older, or wiser, or more doomed. Back in Constantinople, the news of failure is softened for public ears. Official bulletins speak of heroic advances and minor reverses. The truth is whispered in coffee houses. They went to the canal and came back with sand. Jamal Pasha, ever conscious of appearances, stages parades in Damascus to celebrate the spirit of the army. Children wave flags, musicians play marches, but the soldiers marching past have hollow eyes. They know what the desert took. In London, newspapers mock the Turkish mirage. Politicians boast that the Ottoman threat to Egypt is finished. Yet behind the sarcasm lies anxiety. The Middle East has revealed itself as more than a sideshow. It's a vast chessboard, and every move here ripples across the empire. By the end of 1916, the line between defense and ambition blurs again. The British are no longer just protecting the canal, they're preparing to take Jerusalem. The Ottomans, stretched thin by fronts from the Caucasus to Yemen, can only dig in and pray. Somewhere out there, under the same cold stars, both sides dream of victory, but the desert keeps its secrets, as it always does. The sand gives way to stone now, and the war slides north into Palestine, a land of olive groves, rocky hills, and biblical echoes that make even the artillery sound like prophecy. It's 1917, and the British, flushed with new strength, are coming for the Holy Land. After the failed Ottoman strike on Suez, the tables have turned. General Archibald Murray's army, tens of thousands strong, drawn from Britain, India, Australia, and New Zealand, advances steadily up the coast. The railways behind them hum with supplies. Ahead lies Gaza, where the desert meets the sea and history meets hubris. The First Battle of Gaza begins in March 1917. You can almost feel the dust rising as British troops march through shallow wadis, khaki uniforms blending with the sand. They approach under a pale dawn sky, expecting an easy victory. Intelligence reports say the Ottoman defenses are thin. They aren't. Trenches snake across the hills like scars, reinforced with wire and machine guns. Jamal Pasha's men, under the seasoned German general Kress von Kressenstein, are waiting. The British attack with optimism that feels almost rehearsed. At first, they break through. Infantry units seize the town's outskirts, and cavalry riders raise their sabers in triumph. But then, confusion spreads. Communications fail. Dust clouds hide friend from foe. The desert heat turns water into steam inside canteens. By nightfall, commanders, fearing encirclement, order a withdrawal. The men obey reluctantly, trudging back through the dunes. When morning comes, they realize they had won and abandoned the field. Historians still argue whether Gaza was lost to poor maps or poor nerves. Some blame General Murray's indecision, others the mirage of certainty that always blinds invaders in this land. What's certain is that the Ottoman army, though battered, holds. The defenders celebrate by raising the crescent flag over the city walls. One Turkish soldier writes home, "They came like the tide and left like the foam." A quirky tidbit. During the battle, British pigeons carrying messages became disoriented by smoke and flew back to their original lofts, right into Ottoman hands. Jamal Pasha's staff read the enemy's messages out loud at dinner that night. Murray tries again a month later. The Second Battle of Gaza, April 1917, is worse. Now the Ottomans are reinforced, their trenches bristling with German machine guns. The British bombard the city for days, filling the air with a constant thunder that shakes the hills of Judea. Then they advance, wave after wave, across open ground. The result is slaughter. Thousands fall under fire, the sand turning red beneath their boots. When the survivors retreat once more, the empire's dream of a swift conquest evaporates into the desert haze. Back in London, the War Office fumes. Murray is dismissed, replaced by a quieter, more deliberate man, General Edmund Allenby. Known as the Bull for his temper and size, Allenby carries a reputation for grim efficiency. He arrives in Egypt with a promise to change everything, from strategy to sanitation. "We will advance not by miracle," he tells his officers, "but by railway." Allenby's genius lies in patience. He halts the offensive through the scorching summer of 1917, letting his engineers finish the Sinai Railway all the way to Gaza and build a water pipeline alongside it. When his men march again, they'll have trains, telegraphs, and drinking water. The desert will no longer be their enemy. Meanwhile, the Ottoman soldiers dig deeper. The Germans send new advisors. The Turks fortify every ridge. They know the British will come again. And this time, it will not be a small skirmish. In Damascus, Jamal Pasha boasts that Gaza will become the graveyard of the British Empire. In the trenches, though, the men aren't so sure. Supplies are dwindling. Bread arrives moldy. Ammunition is rationed. And every rumor from the north speaks of chaos. The Russians collapsing after revolution. The Armenians gone. Famine in Anatolia. By autumn, the winds shift. Allenby begins his campaign with a ruse. While the Ottomans expect another frontal assault on Gaza, he strikes inland toward Beersheba. On 31st October 1917, British and Anzac troops charge across open desert to seize the town's wells before the defenders can destroy them. The Australian Light Horse Brigade, sabers drawn, gallops through machine gun fire and takes Beersheba by storm. It's one of the last great cavalry charges in history. When news of the victory reaches Jerusalem, Jamal Pasha knows what it means. Gaza cannot hold. Within days, Allenby's forces break through, sweeping north in coordinated waves. The Ottoman army retreats in exhaustion, their lines crumbling faster than they can regroup. The once vaunted Lion of the Desert now prowls through empty headquarters, muttering that even the sand has betrayed him. Historians still argue whether Gaza's fall was inevitable once Beersheba fell. Some call it the triumph of logistics, others the collapse of will. But for the men who fought there, it's simpler. "We were outgunned, outfed, outwatered," one Ottoman corporal writes. "God forgives us, but our stomachs won't." As Gaza falls in November 1917, Allenby's army surges northward. The British newspapers hail it as divine justice. The road to Jerusalem is open. But you know better by now. Nothing in this war is divine. The path ahead winds through rain-soaked hills, broken aqueducts, and cities trembling under famine. Still, for the first time since the war began, the British hold momentum in the Middle East. Their propaganda seizes the symbolism instantly. Crusaders reclaiming the Holy Land, Allenby himself detests the comparison, but London loves it. Posters appear, showing knights in shining armor beside khaki-clad infantry. "Jerusalem next," the headlines scream. And yet, on the Ottoman side, something remarkable happens. Despite defeat, morale doesn't fully collapse. Many soldiers retreat in good order, helping civilians along the way. They sing old marching songs, some about the Prophet's companions, others about lost loves back in Anatolia. In the ruins of Gaza, an imam preaches that God's test is not over. "We lost the gate," he says, "but the heart remains." You walk through that ruined city after the smoke clears. Broken minarets lean at odd angles. The air reeks of cordite and salt. The sea murmurs indifferently beside shattered piers. In a trench, a diary lies open, its pages stiff with sand. The last entry reads, "They told us the British had machines that drink water faster than men. I believe them now." The British rest only briefly before pressing on toward Jerusalem. The Ottoman army falls back again, this time under General Falkenhayn, the former German chief of staff, who vows to hold the holy city at all costs. You can almost hear the echo of his command bouncing off the ancient walls. But the men under him, half-starved, half-broken, know better. They have fought the canal, the desert, and now the sea. The idea of one more last stand feels like a cruel joke. As the rain begins to fall over Palestine's winter fields, you sense history tightening its grip. The armies are changing places now. The empire that began this war with confidence is retreating through lands it once ruled like scripture, and the newcomers march behind railway lines and slogans. Gaza, Beersheba, Jerusalem, they are not just battles, but milestones in an empire's slow unraveling. For the Ottoman soldiers marching north in the drizzle, boots squelching in mud, the question isn't about victory anymore. It's about how much farther they can go before the road ends. Rain falls over the hills of Judea, turning dust to clay and trenches to tombs. The road to Jerusalem is slick, winding, and ancient. Every step presses into layers of history. Crusaders, Mamluks, pilgrims, merchants. They've all passed this way, chasing the same mirage of glory or salvation. Now, in December 1917, you march beside British soldiers slogging up the same path, rifles wrapped in oilcloth against the downpour, boots caked in biblical mud. Ahead lies the holy city, still held by the Ottomans, but not for long. General Edmund Allenby, ever the pragmatist, has planned this carefully. He knows that taking Jerusalem isn't just military, it's symbolic. London expects triumph. Cairo expects logistics. The soldiers expect shelter. He tells his men to treat the city with reverence. No looting, no boasting, he warns. This is a place of faith, not conquest. You can almost hear the weariness in his tone. Even victory here feels heavy. Inside the city, the Ottoman garrison prepares for the inevitable. General Izzet Pasha commands perhaps 10,000 men, brave but starving. Food is gone, ammunition scarce, morale non-existent. The locals suffer even more. The war has stripped Palestine bare. Crops requisitioned, livestock eaten, trade suffocated by blockades. In Jerusalem itself, bread lines stretch through alleys once filled with pilgrims. People sell furniture for flour. The bells of the churches and the calls of the muezzins sound thin in the cold air. Historians still argue whether the Ottoman decision to abandon the city was mercy or necessity. Some say Izzet Pasha refused to let Jerusalem become another Gaza, flattened for the sake of pride. Others think he simply had no choice. His men could barely stand. What's clear is that by early December, he begins quiet negotiations to withdraw without a fight. A quirky tidbit: when the surrender delegation finally approaches the British lines, they accidentally offer the city's keys to a cook. The bewildered man, an army private named Sedgwick, politely refuses, saying he lacked the proper rank for holy cities. It takes 2 more attempts before the handover reaches Allenby himself. On December 11th, 1917, General Allenby enters Jerusalem, not on horseback like a conqueror, but on foot, through the Jaffa Gate. He insists it's out of respect. No man, he says, should ride where prophets walked. The crowds watch in silence as British, Indian, and Anzac troops file in behind him. The Ottoman flags have already been lowered. The city is still, save for the whisper of rain on stone. You can picture it, the cobblestones glistening, the wind carrying the scent of damp earth and incense. For the first time in centuries, Jerusalem changes hands without a massacre. The world reacts with awe and calculation. In London, church bells ring. The newspapers call it the Christmas gift of 1917. Prime Minister Lloyd George declares that the road to Zion has been opened. In Constantinople, the news hits like a hammer. The loss of Jerusalem, Al-Quds, the third holiest site in Islam, shatters what remains of Ottoman confidence. Jamal Pasha, desperate to save face, proclaims the retreat an honorable preservation of sacred ground. Few believe him. Yet in a strange way, the city breathes easier. Under British control, at least for now, the fighting halts at its gates. Hospitals reopen. The starving receive rations. Soldiers, Jewish and Arab alike, pray beside one another in uneasy peace. Allenby posts guards at the holy sites to prevent vandalism. In his diary, he writes simply, "We took Jerusalem, then I ordered everyone to rest." But even as the guns fall silent here, the larger war roars on. To the north, the Ottoman armies retreat toward Nablus and the Jordan Valley, regrouping for another stand. The British follow cautiously, wary of overextending. The campaign that began with sand and thirst now turns into one of mud and exhaustion. You wander through Jerusalem as the soldiers do, marveling and uneasy. The western wall glows faintly by torchlight. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre smells of candle wax and damp stone. Everywhere, soldiers whisper, some in wonder, others in disbelief. "We're fighting in the Bible," one mutters. Another, less pious, says, "Feels like the Bible's fighting back." Historians still debate whether Allenby's restraint was born of faith or pragmatism. Some claim he was genuinely moved by the city's sanctity. Others think he wanted to avoid giving Germany and the Ottomans a propaganda gift. Whatever his motive, his entry marks a rare moment of grace in a war that forgot what that word means. Meanwhile, the Ottoman Empire reels. Losing Jerusalem isn't just a military setback, it's a spiritual one. From the pulpits of Constantinople, imams try to reframe the loss as a divine test, but people whisper darker things. Famine grips Anatolia and Syria. Locust swarms devour what little remains of the crops. The war that began as jihad has become starvation in slow motion. Jamal Pasha, now back in Damascus, orders public executions of suspected dissenters. The gallows on Marjah Square become a symbol of the empire's desperation. And yet, there are moments of strange decency. As Ottoman troops withdraw north, they escort hundreds of civilians, Muslims, Christians, Jews, out of the city, protecting them from bandits and deserters. One officer writes, "We could not save the city, but we could save its people." It's a small light in a dark time, easily forgotten by history's harsher eyes. A British chaplain walking the Mount of Olives the morning after the surrender notes something almost poetic. The rain stops, the clouds part, the city glows in pale sunlight. It was quiet, he writes, as if Jerusalem herself were relieved. For the British, though, victory here is not an ending. It's a beginning. The fall of Jerusalem ignites dreams in London and Cairo of a new order in the Middle East. Behind the front lines, diplomats are already drawing maps, carving promises into treaties. One of them, the Balfour Declaration, issued just weeks earlier, pledges support for a national home for the Jewish people. Another, whispered in secret between Britain and France, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, divides the Arab lands like spoils. The ink is still wet while the blood is still warm. For the Ottomans, Jerusalem's loss confirms what some already fear. The empire is dying, and no prayer will resurrect it. In Damascus, Jamal Pasha stares at a wall map pocked with pins and mutters that perhaps the desert will outlive us all. He's not wrong. That winter, the soldiers on both sides settle into their trenches along the Judean hills. They build fires from olive branches, watch the stars, and wonder how much longer this war can last. Somewhere out there, the muezzin calls across the valley, his voice carrying through the night air. The echoes mingle with the faint strains of a British bugle. For a fleeting moment, the war sounds almost like music. You realize then what this theater has become. Not just a fight between empires, but between exhaustion and endurance, between faith and the slow erosion of it. The holy city has changed flags, but the suffering beyond its walls continues, unmoved, unending, like the desert wind. South of Damascus, the desert begins to whisper rebellion. The wind there carries something new, something both fragile and furious. It's June 1916 when the first rifle cracks echo across the Hejaz, and the Ottoman flag that's flown over Mecca for 4 centuries begins to tremble in the heat. What starts as a skirmish between tribes becomes, slowly, an idea. The Arab Revolt. You can picture the scene. The holy city of Mecca shimmering under a merciless sun, the call to prayer drowned out by gunfire from the hills. Sharif Hussein bin Ali, the Hashemite ruler of the Hejaz and guardian of the holy places, has decided that the empire he once served no longer deserves his loyalty. Years of broken promises, heavy taxes, and Turkish officers treating Arab soldiers as expendable have pushed him past the point of no return. He writes to his sons, Ali, Abdullah, and the youngest, Faisal, and declares it is time for the Arabs to rise. Their banners go up, red and black and green, stitched hastily in the night. Ottoman garrisons in Mecca, Medina, and Taif awake to find themselves surrounded by tribesmen shouting Allahu Akbar and freedom for Arabia. The empire that declared jihad 2 years earlier now faces one on its own doorstep. Historians still argue whether the revolt was born of genuine nationalism or British persuasion. The truth, as always, is tangled. Sharif Hussein had been courted for months by Sir Henry McMahon, the British High Commissioner in Egypt, who promised independence for the Arabs if they helped fight the Ottomans. In return, Hussein's sons would lead an army of tribesmen, while British gold and guns would do the rest. It sounded like destiny. It was really diplomacy in disguise. The Ottomans, for their part, are furious. Enver Pasha brands Hussein a traitor, a renegade servant of the Caliphate. Jamal Pasha, now the overlord of Syria, responds with fury, arresting and executing suspected sympathizers in Beirut and Damascus. The gallows in Marjah Square swing again. For every Arab who joins Hussein, another is hanged as an example. The empire's veins are turning on themselves. Still, the revolt grows. Medina holds out under the legendary Ottoman commander Fakhri Pasha, who vows to defend the Prophet's city until the last bullet. His garrison endures years of siege, supplied only by the Hejaz Railway, a line of steel threading north from Damascus through the desert, carrying food, ammunition, and defiance. The rebels can't take Medina, so they turn their attention to the railway itself. A quirky tidbit: among the Ottoman defenders of Medina, Fakhri Pasha kept a pet lion in his headquarters, a gift from the local zoo as a symbol of loyalty. The lion survived longer than many of his soldiers. The Desert War begins in earnest now, a strange, fluid campaign fought by men on camels, armed with dynamite and dreams. The British send rifles, gold sovereigns, and a handful of military advisors to guide the revolt. Among them is a young intelligence officer named Thomas Edward Lawrence. Small, sunburned, and often underestimated, he becomes the revolt's myth in motion, the man the world will later call Lawrence of Arabia. You ride beside him in your mind, linen scarf whipping in the wind, camel lurching beneath him, revolver bouncing against his hip. Lawrence is part spy, part poet, part mirage. He moves between tribes, winning their trust with respect rather than arrogance. He learns their dialects, eats their food, sleeps under their stars. He's fascinated by the way the desert seems to erase everything unnecessary: ego, fear, even time. Historians still debate how much of Lawrence's legend is fact and how much self-made myth. His later writings glow with drama: exploding trains, daring raids, sweeping visions of Arab unity. The truth is murkier. For every successful ambush, there are 10 that fail. The tribes fight bravely, but not always together. They argue over spoils, over pride, over old feuds. The British call it unreliable, but really, it's just human. The Ottomans underestimated it first. A few bandits, Jamal Pasha sneers. But by 1917, those bandits have cut the Hejaz Railway in 100 places. Trains derail in bursts of fire. Telegraph poles topple. Supply lines vanish into the dunes. Fakhri Pasha's garrison in Medina, proud and starving, becomes an island surrounded by sand. Somewhere in those years, the war changes texture. It stops feeling like empire versus empire and starts to feel like rebellion versus exhaustion. The desert eats away at both sides. Ottoman soldiers in their crumbling forts watch the horizon for camels that never come. Arab fighters ride for days just to destroy a few meters of track. The sun burns equally cruelly on both. A British liaison officer describes the scene near Wadi Ais. "We had no maps, no water, no sense of direction, only the sound of the rails cooling at sunset. You can almost hear it yourself, the metal pinging softly as the heat bleeds away." Lawrence's raids grow bolder. He and Prince Faisal lead their fighters north toward Aqaba, the Red Sea port that controls the gateway into Palestine. The Ottomans consider it safe, protected by cliffs and by the sea. They never expect an attack from the landward side. On the 6th of July 1917, after a grueling march through the Wadi Sirhan, the Arab forces strike. The defenders, surprised, dehydrated, and demoralized, surrender within hours. When the news reaches Cairo, Allenby can scarcely believe it. "Aqaba from the land," he exclaims. "They've done the impossible." That victory changes everything. The Arab Revolt now has a base, a harbor, and legitimacy. Ships unload supplies from Egypt. Aircraft begin to appear over the desert skies. For the first time, the Ottoman Empire's southern flank is bleeding for real. Still, for all the British praise, Sharif Hussein's dream of full Arab independence is already in jeopardy. Unbeknownst to him, the British and French have long since agreed, in the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement of 1916, to divide the Arab lands between them after the war. London's promises of freedom are printed on the same paper as its plans for partition. Lawrence himself knows this and despises it, but he plays the part, hoping the war's end might force a fairer outcome. It won't. The Hejaz campaign continues, brutal and nomadic. The Arabs strike the railway again and again. Ottoman engineers repair it by night. It's blown up again by dawn. It becomes almost ritual, a dance of destruction and futility. Fakhri Pasha in Medina refuses to surrender, even after the armistice in 1918. He will hold out until January 1919, when his own men arrest him. Back in Damascus, Jamal Pasha's fury boils into paranoia. He sees betrayal everywhere. His telegrams to Enver grow desperate. "The Arabs have sold us. We stand alone." He doesn't know that soon, even Enver will flee. The empire's heart is dissolving from within, while its borders burn. You sit with the desert rebels one night as they rest by a campfire. The stars spread like spilled salt overhead. They're half asleep, half starved, and still joking about camels, about gold, about how the British tea tastes like dust. Lawrence listens quietly, scribbling notes in a tiny journal. He's already writing history, though the men around him don't know it. The fire crackles. Somewhere far away, a train explodes in the dark. The war here feels both endless and intimate, as if the desert itself were keeping score. For the Ottomans, every grain of sand now feels like an enemy. For the Arabs, every sunrise brings both hope and the creeping shadow of betrayal. When you finally close your eyes, you realize the irony. The revolt that promised freedom will help destroy the empire and replace it with something not yet born and not yet honest. The desert knows this already. The dunes shift quietly, as if preparing new borders for new masters. The nights over Arabia glow faintly now, not from moonlight, but from dynamite. Steel rails shatter, embers flare, and the echo of explosions rolls like thunder through the wadis. This is the sound of the Hejaz Railway dying, one bridge at a time. You're riding with Lawrence and Prince Faisal's fighters somewhere between Ma'an and Daraa in mid-1917. The air smells of sweat, cordite, and cardamom coffee. The camels grunt impatiently, kneeling under their loads of explosives. The men move like ghosts, padding across sand that still holds the heat of the day. The revolt has matured into a kind of artistry, warfare stripped to its bones. The Ottomans still hold Medina and the northern stations, but the line that feeds them is fraying. Every night, another segment vanishes. Lawrence carries his own detonator in a tin box and jokes that he's become a navvy of destruction. In truth, he's tired. You can hear it in the tone of his reports, half engineer, half confessor. The Turks are strong, he writes, but they are chained to iron roads. We are free of them. Historians still debate how much these raids mattered strategically. Some argue they were pinpricks, more spectacle than substance. Others insist they forced the Ottomans to waste entire divisions guarding the desert. Whatever the calculus, the results are undeniable. Trains derail weekly, supply depots burn, and soldiers begin to fear the desert itself. The empire that once stretched across continents is now fighting sand. At dawn, the raiders vanish into the dunes. By midday, the heat is unbearable, rifles too hot to touch, lips splitting from thirst. Then, as the horizon blurs, the faint tremor of another locomotive approaches. The men perk up. Lawrence raises his field glasses. One more, he mutters, for the map makers. Another explosion, another geyser of sand and metal, and then silence again. A quirky tidbit. Some Arab tribesmen, fascinated by the wrecked trains, pried off brass fittings and turned them into jewelry. Gold watch chains engraved with Ottoman crests began appearing in Mecca's markets before the year was out. Beyond the raids, the politics of revolt grow thornier. Prince Faisal, leading the Northern Front, must hold together a coalition of tribes whose loyalty is bought by weekly deliveries of British gold. He's dignified, cautious, and shrewd, a diplomat wearing a Bedouin robe. Lawrence admires him deeply, calling him the cleanest soul in Arabia, though he also sees the trap tightening around him. The British promise independence, but keep control of the money, the weapons, the telegraphs. The Arabs fight for freedom, yet every rifle comes with a receipt. Meanwhile, the Ottoman commanders grow desperate. Fakhri Pasha's garrison in Medina still refuses to yield, its soldiers clinging to the Prophet's city as a symbol of divine favor. He sends telegrams begging for relief that never comes. Jamal Pasha, from Damascus, sends replies that read like prayers. Hold firm. Reinforcements soon. Everyone knows the lie, but in war, hope is cheaper than bullets. You pass through one of those outposts, a half-buried fort near Tabuk. Inside, Ottoman soldiers huddle around a sputtering stove. Their faces are gray with dust, their boots long since rotted. Yet when the muezzin calls, they rise and pray, rifles stacked neatly beside them. One murmurs afterward, "The empire is falling, but God remains." It's not bravado, it's endurance. Lawrence watches them too, and something in him shifts. The romantic dream begins to tarnish. He's seen prisoners executed, tribes slaughtered by rivals, and British officers treating Arab allies like chess pieces. "We are deceiving them," he writes in his diary, "and they will not forgive us." But he keeps fighting, perhaps out of guilt, perhaps out of love for the men who still believe in the impossible. By early 1918, the revolt links up with Allenby's main army in Palestine. The British advance north through the Jordan Valley, while Faisal's Arabs harass the flanks. The partnership is uneasy. Formal handshakes by day, whispered suspicions by night. British officers call the Arabs irregulars, meaning unreliable. The Arabs call the British friends with pens, meaning liars. Both are right in their way. The Ottoman position is collapsing. Supplies that once flowed from Anatolia are cut off by Allied blockades and internal chaos. Famine grips Syria. Prices for bread multiply tenfold. Ottoman soldiers receive dates instead of pay. Desertion spreads like disease. Jamal Pasha orders public floggings for thieves, hangings for deserters, sermons for everyone else. It doesn't work. And yet, the empire refuses to vanish quietly. In the spring of 1918, German aircraft appear over the Jordan, strafing British columns. Ottoman artillery still barks from the ridges near Amman. In one fierce skirmish, Arab fighters charge a machine gun nest on horseback, sabers flashing. When it's over, they bury the dead and share water with the captured Turks. The desert has its own code. Brutal, but not without honor. A British war correspondent traveling with Lawrence notes how strange it feels to see medieval tactics next to modern ones. "A Bedouin with a camel," he writes, "rides past the wreck of a German airplane. The centuries seem to argue." That image stays with you. The war itself as a collision of time, as if the world can't decide whether to move forward or backward. The raids continue into the summer. At Daraa, near the Syrian border, Lawrence and Faisal prepare the next phase, linking the revolt with Allenby's grand offensive in Palestine. Their goal is Damascus. If they can reach it first, perhaps the Arabs can claim it before the Allies carve it apart. Every train sabotaged, every Ottoman patrol ambushed is a step toward that mirage. Historians still argue about Lawrence's influence in these months. Was he truly shaping strategy, or simply translating for men whose courage needed no British permission? The consensus leans somewhere in between. He's both myth and man, useful to the empire as propaganda, and to the Arabs as a strange, stubborn ally. One evening, in a camp near Azraq, Lawrence sits alone beside a dying fire. His journal, later found, describes the sky as a dome of glass cracked with stars. He writes that he feels both infinite and hollow. "We are making a new world," he notes, "and it tastes of ashes." By autumn, the Ottoman strength is spent. The Hijaz line is effectively dead, its bridges twisted skeletons. Fakhri Pasha in Medina holds out on sheer faith. The empire's garrisons north of Damascus wait for orders that never arrive. In Constantinople, ministers speak in whispers of surrender, even as they issue proclamations of victory. You stand now in the desert wind and listen. No trains, no telegraph hum, only the faint cry of jackals. The Ottoman Empire began this war as the Caliphate of Islam, confident and defiant. 4 years later, it is a shadow stretched thin across sand and memory. And yet, the men who fought for it, Turkish peasants, Arab villagers, Kurdish cavalry, Armenian laborers, all shared one thing in common. They believed they were defending home. Empires are made by such illusions. As night falls, the desert cools. The raiders prepare for another strike, though they hardly need one. The war is nearly over. The rails are already ghosts. Lawrence wipes sand from his goggles and mutters, "Tomorrow, we ride north." The words drift into the dark like smoke. You realize that north means more than direction. It means destiny. Ahead lies Syria, Damascus, and the end of an empire that once ruled 3 continents. The desert has done its work. Now it's time for history to finish the rest. Northward you ride, leaving the dunes behind. The sand thins into gravel, the wind sharpens, and the horizon begins to break into green valleys and stone villages. This is Syria, Ottoman Syria, and by the late summer of 1918, it's trembling on its foundations. The war has turned, the empire is dying, and everyone can feel the walls creaking. In Constantinople, Enver Pasha pretends otherwise. He still sends telegrams full of thunder. Hold the line! Reinforcements coming. But the lines no longer hold, and the reinforcements no longer exist. The Germans, once brothers in arms, are retreating in Europe. The Bulgarians, crushed by Allied offensives, are suing for peace. The Ottoman front in the Caucasus has disintegrated. The one in Mesopotamia bleeds daily. And now the British are preparing a final blow in Palestine, a blow that will crack open the last gate to Damascus. Historians still argue whether the collapse began in the trenches or the ministries. Some point to starvation, others to corruption, and still others to exhaustion so deep that even ambition fell asleep. But if you stand on one of those Syrian hills in 1918, watching both armies prepare, you can feel that the end isn't military, it's gravitational. Everything Ottoman is sliding downhill, slowly, beautifully, hopelessly. You see Damascus from afar, minarets rising over orchards, the Barada River glinting through poplars. Once, this city was the beating heart of empire, the place where caliphs dreamed of eternity. Now it's a crossroads for deserters, refugees, and scavengers. The railway yards are half-bombed. The hospitals are full. The bazaars echo with the sound of barter and fear. Still, Jamal Pasha's successors try to hold what they can. Turkish officers fortify ridges around Megiddo, just south of the Galilean hills, where Allenby's British and Imperial Army, reinforced by Indians, Australians, and New Zealanders, waits, with 70,000 men. The Ottomans have half that number, scattered, hungry, and uncertain. General Lehmann von Sanders, the German commander now overseeing the front, prays for time. Allenby gives him none. The offensive begins on the night of the 18th of September, 1918. You can almost hear it, the low murmur of engines, the shuffle of boots, the last quiet before the storm. At dawn on the 19th, the British artillery opens up. The sky itself seems to split. Within hours, the Ottoman trenches are rubble. Cavalry pour through the gaps. The Indian divisions sweep west toward the coast. The Arabs under Faisal surge north from the desert. The Battle of Megiddo has begun. It's lightning disguised as strategy. Allenby's coordination is flawless. Infantry pinning the center while cavalry cut the rear. Within 3 days, the Ottoman front collapses completely. Units surrender in battalion chunks. Others simply vanish into the hills. By the time the sun sets on 21st September, the British have advanced 40 miles. A quirky tidbit. A captured Ottoman staff officer later admitted that many soldiers thought the end of the world had come. "We saw airplanes dropping fire," he said, describing the RAF bombers that strafed retreating columns. "We believed the sky itself was fighting us." Historians call Megiddo the Armageddon of the Great War, not just for its biblical setting, but for its scale of unraveling. In the chaos, an entire army ceases to exist. Lehmann von Sanders flees north to Aleppo. His field reports read like elegies. Jamal Pasha's old administration in Damascus sends frantic telegrams, begging Constantinople for aid that never arrives. For the British and their Arab allies, the victory is intoxicating. Lawrence, riding with Faisal's tribes, watches the Ottoman retreat dissolve into dust. "It was as if the empire blew away," he writes later. His men seize Dara, then push for Damascus, racing the British columns to claim the prize. Every mile of desert now feels like borrowed time. But as they advance, they pass through devastation. Villages burned by both sides. roads lined with dead horses, children waving white rags not out of surrender but starvation. The war here has lasted too long. Victory tastes like ashes. In Damascus, panic ripples through the streets. Ottoman officers in fezzes and frayed uniforms burn papers in their headquarters. Civil servants pack what they can into carts. Locals tear down imperial portraits from cafes and replace them with nothing. The empire is already gone. It just hasn't received the memo. And yet, amid the collapse, dignity flickers. Some Ottoman units form rearguards, fighting not for empire, but for honor. At Samach on the Sea of Galilee, a small garrison of Turkish and German soldiers holds off Allenby's cavalry until they are overrun. When the survivors are captured, they salute their conquerors before lowering their rifles. One British officer writes, "They fought like men whose world was ending," and it was. By the 30th of September, Damascus falls. The Arab irregulars, led by Faisal and Lawrence, enter the city first. The British arrive hours later. Crowds cheer, not entirely sure whom they're cheering for. For a moment, it feels like liberation. Then the flags go up, the red, green, black, and white of the Arab Revolt, and everyone realizes the next chapter will be complicated. Lawrence walks through the city in silence. The streets are lined with Ottoman soldiers lying where they fell. He notes in his diary that the stench of death mixes with the perfume of jasmine. "This was victory," he writes, "and it felt like betrayal." Meanwhile, in Constantinople, Enver Pasha vanishes. He slips out of the city under false papers bound for the Caucasus, still dreaming of raising new armies. Talat and Jamal follow soon after. The triumvirate that once ruled the empire has dissolved into fugitives. The Sultan, Mehmed VI, is left with a throne made of air. By October 1918, only one truth remains. The war is over for the Ottomans, even if no one has yet said the words aloud. The railways are gone, the armies scattered, and the people starving. What began in Odessa with 2 cruisers sneaking across a moonless sea now ends here, in the ruins of Megiddo and the dust of Damascus. A German officer, observing the final retreat, writes home, "I have seen the fall of Rome, if Rome had trains and telegraphs." It's a haunting thought, the collapse of something ancient wearing the mask of modernity. You stand on a ridge overlooking the valley where it all happened. The sun sinks into the haze, painting the land gold and red. Somewhere below, broken rifles glint in the dirt. The war in the Middle East has burned through everything: faith, empire, geography. And what remains is only silence. The Arab troops march into Damascus shouting freedom. The British officers salute them politely, and the Ottomans, those few who survive, begin the long walk home to Anatolia, carrying nothing but memory. The desert wind follows, whispering its same old refrain: all empires are sand in the end. The empire is a ghost now, drifting north on weary feet. After Damascus falls, the Ottoman armies retreat toward Aleppo and the Taurus Mountains. One last redoubt between them and annihilation. The road north is lined with wreckage, burned carts, dead mules, abandoned uniforms. The heat gives way to cold rain, but the misery doesn't lift. For every soldier left alive, there are 10 wandering civilians: Arabs, Armenians, Greeks, Kurds, all trying to outrun hunger and history. It's October 1918, and the once mighty Ottoman war machine is barely breathing. Lehman von Sanders, the German general still nominally in command, scrapes together a defensive line along the Aleppo plain. His telegrams are dignified but delusional. "We shall make a stand." What he really means is, "We shall delay the inevitable." Allenby's army, flushed with victory at Megiddo, pushes forward relentlessly. Behind him, the Arabs under Faisal sweep north through the desert like a rising tide. The two forces converge on Aleppo, a city of minarets and markets now swollen with refugees. For centuries, Aleppo has been the crossroads of empire: Roman, Arab, Mongol, Ottoman, and it's about to host one more army before history resets again. You can almost smell the air. Wood smoke, wet dust, unwashed men, the faint sweetness of rotting figs. The British advance halts briefly at Homs to rest the horses, while the Arabs approach from the east, their camels trailing banners stitched from captured Turkish cloth. Lawrence rides with them, gaunt and hollow-eyed, more ghost than soldier now. "We are chasing a shadow," he writes, "and it is fading faster than we can run." In Aleppo, the last Ottoman governor gathers his staff in a crumbling office. The telegraph wires are dead, the trains no longer run, and the city's garrison is down to a few thousand exhausted men. They know they can't hold. Still, they hang the red flag over the citadel one last time, as if ceremony could stop collapse. When the Arabs arrive on the 25th of October, the defenders fire a few shells, then melt away. The empire's last battle in the Middle East lasts less than a day. Historians still argue whether the fall of Aleppo was a battle at all, or just a sigh. Some call it Allenby's final victory. Others say the Ottomans had already ceased to exist by then. What's certain is that within a week, the Sultan's government in Constantinople begins to send peace signals. The empire that entered the war with a declaration of jihad now ends it with telegrams of surrender. A quirky tidbit. When news of Aleppo's fall reached the capital, an Ottoman censor tried to forbid newspapers from printing it, fearing panic. The papers printed it anyway, alongside a small announcement about the weather. "Rain in the north," the headline read. Perhaps the most understated obituary an empire ever received. As October fades, the British Navy blockades the Aegean, French forces occupy Beirut, and the Arab army settles uneasily into Damascus. Everywhere, the map is being rewritten before the ink dries. The French lay claim to Syria under the secret Sykes-Picot Agreement. The British eye Mesopotamia and Palestine, and the Arabs, who fought believing they were carving out their own kingdom, realize they've merely softened the clay for others to mold. Lawrence, torn between pride and guilt, resigns his post soon after. "Better to leave the stage before the play ends in lies," he writes. He'll go home to England, haunted forever by the faces of men who trusted him. Faisal, meanwhile, travels to Damascus to negotiate with the French, unaware that Paris and London have already decided his fate. Back in Constantinople, Mehmed VI, the Sultan Caliph, sits in the Dolmabahce Palace, staring at the Bosporus. German warships idle in the harbor, their crews waiting for permission to leave. Ministers come and go with sheaves of paper, each one stamped URGENT. None of it matters anymore. On the 30th of October, 1918, aboard the British warship Agamemnon, anchored off the island of Lemnos, Ottoman delegates sign the Armistice of Mudros. The war is over. The terms are brutal. Allied forces will occupy the Dardanelles and Constantinople. Ottoman troops must withdraw from Syria, Mesopotamia, Arabia, and the Caucasus. The empire is to disarm, disband, and await partition. It's the death warrant of 600 years written in elegant diplomatic French. You can imagine the scene aboard the Agamemnon. The creak of chairs, the scratch of pens, the low murmur of interpreters. The Ottoman representative, Rauf Bey, signs with a trembling hand. When it's done, he says nothing, just stares at the ink soaking into paper as if it were blood. Outside, the sea is calm. Empires rarely get dramatic endings. Most just drown quietly. In Constantinople, the news spreads by whispers first, then by shouts. Some weep, others simply shrug. After 4 years of hunger, censorship, and death, surrender feels less like defeat and more like relief. But beneath that relief lies dread. Everyone knows what comes next: occupation. Indeed, within weeks, Allied ships steam up the Bosporus. British, French, and Italian soldiers disembark in the capital. The Union Jack flies over the same skyline where the call to prayer still rings. Ottoman officers are ordered to hand over their weapons. German advisors slip out under cover of darkness. The empire's heart is now a puppet theater, its strings held by strangers. In the streets, children play among discarded helmets. Shopkeepers reopen stalls selling tea and old uniforms. The city tries to pretend life continues, but the weight of empire's absence is everywhere. In the silence of mosques at noon, in the empty barracks by the Golden Horn, in the way no one says the word victory anymore. Historians still debate whether the armistice of Mudros was mercy or humiliation. Some argue it saved lives by ending a hopeless fight. Others see it as the dismemberment of a nation under the guise of peace. The truth is, both. It ended a war, but it began something worse, a reckoning. For the people who survived it, the war has no tidy end. In Anatolia, demobilized soldiers wander home to find villages burned and fields barren. In Syria and Lebanon, famine still kills quietly. In Armenia, survivors of the genocide return to ruins. And across the Arab world, the taste of betrayal lingers sharper than dust. The last Ottoman soldiers leave Aleppo in silence. They march in loose columns, rifles slung, heading toward the mountains and whatever is left of home. Some still wear medals from the Balkan Wars. Others have only rags. One of them turns to look back at the city's skyline and mutters, "So ends our kingdom." No one answers. The war began with 2 cruisers raiding Odessa. It ends with warships anchored over the bones of the empire. The circle closes perfectly, almost cruelly. You realize that the Middle Eastern theater, that so-called sideshow of the Great War, has not just witnessed the end of one empire, but the birth pangs of dozens of futures. Nations will rise from these ashes. Borders will be drawn by strangers, and the desert will keep its secrets. For now, though, you stand on the quayside at Constantinople as the sun sets. The domes glow faintly, gulls drift over the water, and the muezzins begin the evening call. The empire that once promised to unite faith and power dissolves into the twilight, and the sea, as always, swallows the echoes without a trace. The guns have stopped, but the silence that follows the armistice of Mudro is not peace. It's paralysis. The Ottoman Empire, that sprawling old body of empires past, lies dismembered on the operating table of Europe. The victors pick through the remains with scalpels, not swords, and draw new lines on maps as if geography were clay. Out of the war's chaos comes a reshaping of an entire world. And for millions who live here, the pain has only just begun. In the winter of 1918, Constantinople feels like a museum of ghosts. Allied flags flutter over the old palaces. Soldiers in unfamiliar uniforms patrol the same streets where sultans once rode. The people stare, some with awe, some with quiet hatred. British sailors play football in the courtyards of Topkapi, their laughter echoing off tiles painted with Quranic verses. French officers sip coffee in the Para district, pretending not to notice starving children begging beside the tram lines. The empire's capital, once the seat of a caliph, is now an occupied city. The Sultan, Mehmed VI, signs decrees he doesn't believe in. He calls himself the protector of Islam, even as Allied officers oversee his police. Historians still argue whether the Ottoman collapse was inevitable or if a different peace could have spared it. Some say it was doomed the moment it entered the war on Germany's side. Others point to deeper rot, centuries of corruption, arrogance, and neglect. But even they admit the empire did not die quietly. It went down thrashing, dragging half the world into its fall. The human cost is impossible to grasp. In Anatolia and Syria, famine kills more civilians than bullets. In 1919, British observers record entire villages empty, their inhabitants starved or fled. Disease follows hunger: typhus, influenza, cholera. The Red Crescent can barely keep up. In the mountains of eastern Turkey, Armenians who survived deportation returned to ashes. In Aleppo and Beirut, refugees sell their wedding rings for bread. A Syrian merchant writes in his diary, "Peace has come, but our graves are not yet full." And yet, amid this misery, something stirs. The Arab Revolt, though small in battlefield impact, has lit a fuse of identity across the Middle East. Faisal dreams of an Arab kingdom stretching from Aleppo to Aden. His father, Sharif Hussein, rules a fragile Hijaz with British bayonets at his back. But the diplomats in Paris have other plans. The same Britain that whispered promises of independence now argues that the Arabs are not yet ready to govern themselves. France, invoking civilization, claims Syria and Lebanon. Britain takes Iraq and Palestine. The Sykes-Picot lines drawn in pencil years before are now carved in ink. You can picture the moment in Paris, 1919. Men in tailored suits hunching over maps, while outside, snow falls on the Champs-Élysées. Lawrence of Arabia stands in the hallway, a reluctant messenger for the Arabs he'd led through fire. He wears his white desert robes among diplomats in tuxedos. When Faisal pleads his case for Arab independence, the French delegate shrugs. "We have our spheres," he says. The idealism of the desert dissolves under the fluorescent glare of empire reborn. Back in the Middle East, the consequences unfold like a slow avalanche. British troops occupy Baghdad, declaring it liberated. In Palestine, Jewish immigration accelerates under the Balfour Declaration's promise of a national home, planting the seeds of future conflict. In Syria, French forces march into Damascus in 1920 and drive Faisal into exile after a brief, hopeless stand at Maysalun. The dream of one Arab kingdom dies before it begins. Meanwhile, in Anatolia, the empire's heartland refuses burial. Allied forces carve up the country under the Treaty of Sèvres, 1920, handing pieces to Greece, France, Italy, and Armenia. Istanbul weeps. The Sultan signs. And then something extraordinary happens. A general from Salonika, Mustafa Kemal, the same man who fought at Gallipoli, gathers soldiers, peasants, and teachers in the interior and says, "No more." His movement will become the Turkish War of Independence, a rebellion not for empire, but for nationhood. The Ottomans die, but from their ashes the Republic will rise. Historians still debate whether this rebirth was destiny or defiance. Some call it the first modern revolution of the Muslim world, not religious, but political, born of exhaustion and pride. Others see it as a rejection of everything Ottoman, the palaces, the piety, the arrogance. Whatever the case, it is the empire's final paradox, dying so something new could live. But if Turkey finds renewal, the rest of the Middle East inherits fragmentation. The war has not only destroyed borders, it has created them. Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Transjordan, names that barely existed before 1918, now appear on maps drawn in London and Paris. Lines that cut through deserts, tribes, and centuries of coexistence. One British official jokes, "We created countries while balancing our teacups." He's not entirely wrong. In the years that follow, famine gives way to resentment. Colonial administrators arrive with typewriters and arrogance, promising mandates instead of empires. Rebellions break out almost immediately. In Iraq, 1920, Syria, 1925, Palestine, 1936. Each is crushed, but each plants a deeper seed of resistance. The Ottoman Empire, for all its faults, had ruled by negotiation and tradition. The new order rules by paperwork and bayonets. A quirky tidbit. When the French occupied Damascus, they forced local officials to raise the tricolor over the city's citadel. The next morning, someone replaced it with the old Arab Revolt flag. The French replaced it again. The pattern continued for weeks, flag for flag, dawn after dawn. An early, quiet act of defiance in a century that will see many louder ones. For ordinary people, though, ideology means little. what they feel most is loss of stability, of identity, of meaning. A generation raised under the Ottoman crescent now finds itself divided by new passports and new masters. "We were Ottomans yesterday," one Syrian teacher laments, "and today we are statistics." Even nature seems to mourn. The Tigris, once a highway of war, flows quietly past the ruins of Kut and Baghdad. The Hejaz Railway lies rusted, its bridges blown and tracks swallowed by sand. In Palestine, the trenches of Gaza are filling with wildflowers. The desert forgets quickly, people do not. And yet, as night falls on this broken world, you sense a strange calm. Not peace, but the space before something else begins. The Middle East is no longer a backwater of empire. It has become the world's crossroads again, reshaped by fire, awaiting its next story. You stand by the Bosporus one last time, watching the lights of the occupied city shimmer on the water. Somewhere behind those lights, a new age is stirring. Nationalism, independence, modernity. The Ottoman Empire is gone, but its shadow stretches across every border drawn in its wake. You realize that history doesn't end. It just changes costumes. The wind off the sea smells of salt and coal. Ships move slowly through the straits, their hulls reflecting the dying light. Above, the call to prayer rises over Istanbul. Soft, weary, eternal. It's a voice that has survived sultans, crusaders, and conquerors. It will survive this too. And as you listen, you understand that this is how empires truly die. Not with explosions, but with whispers, carried by the same wind that once filled their sails. And now, as the echoes fade, let's breathe. The war is over, the fires have cooled. You've traveled through deserts and mountains, past rivers of blood and oceans of dust, through a century's worth of collapse in a single night. Let it go now. Imagine the Middle East beneath a soft dawn, the Tigris turning silver, the minarets of Aleppo catching the first light, the desert quiet again except for the rustle of palms. The soldiers are gone, the guns are rust. The empire that once called itself eternal has become a memory, folded gently into the earth. You trace its ghosts, the empty railways, the cracked mosques, the forgotten graves where names have washed away. All of it still whispers, not of glory, but of endurance. History, for all its noise, always ends in silence. And in that silence, there's peace. The kind that doesn't belong to empires or generals, but to the land itself. The wind over the dunes, the call to prayer in a ruined city, the laughter of children born long after the shooting stopped. So take a breath. Let the world drift back to stillness. The story of the Ottoman Empire's last war is done. The stars are out again over the desert, indifferent and kind. Somewhere, a train rusts quietly in the sand, its tracks vanishing into the horizon. Sleep well. The empire has finally fallen asleep too.